No. I'm going to object if you slow down.
All right. A quorum being present, the Committee on Homeland Security will come to order. The committee is meeting today for consideration of H.R. 2932, the Homeland Security Children Act, H.R. 3469, the Covert Testing and Risk Mitigation Improvement Act of 2019, H.R. 3787, the DHS Countering Unmanned Aircraft Systems Coordinator Act, H.R. 4237, the Advancing Cybersecurity Diagnostic and Mitigation Act, H.R. 4402, the Inland Water Security Review Act, H.R. 4713, the Department of Homeland Security Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Authorization Act, H.R. 4727, the Department of Homeland Security Mentor Protege Program Act of 2019, H.R. 4737, the Department of Homeland Security Climate Change Research Act, H.R. 4739, the Synthetic Opioid Exposure Prevention and Training Act, H.R. 4753, the Drone Origination Security Enhancement Act, H.R. 4761, the DHS Opioid Detection Resilience Act of 2019, and H.R. 4782, the National Commission on Online Platforms and Homeland Security Act. The chair wishes to announce that to the extent practicable, it's my intention that take any recorded vote as they are requested and to not roll votes, and that the chair may recess the committee at any point. Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good morning. Let me, first of all, say that last week we lost a great leader and inspiring colleague, Chairman Elijah Cummings. Chairman Cummings dedicated his life to fighting for justice, democracy, his constituents, and the American people. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to serve with him for more than 2 decades. In the days to come, the House, as an institution, will feel the absence of his great leadership. For my part, I'll also miss his friendship and good counsel. Today, we will honor his legacy in a small but appropriate way by considering a bill he authored to make concrete improvements to our government. H.R. 3469, the Covert Testing and Risk Mitigation Improvement Act, focuses on improving the effectiveness and integrity of the covert test TSA conducts to identify vulnerabilities in airport security operation. The bill directs TSA to not only carry out and refine its covert testing programs, but also to use the information gathered to improve the agency's security operation. I thank my colleagues for their support of this important bill and for helping to carry forward Chairman Cummings' work. Today, we'll also be considering H.R. 4782, the National Commission on Online Platforms and Homeland Security Act, which addresses the committee's oversight regarding terrorism-related content on social media platforms. The bill establishes a bipartisan commission to consider how terrorists and other nefarious actors have used online platforms. The commission will be charged with looking at past terrorist incidents and coming up with voluntary mechanisms that the online platforms could use to make their sites safer. Through our oversight of the social media companies, it is evident that this is one of those areas where the private sector needs the government to be a convener. We've also been working on the legislation for some time, and over the past month, we intensified our bipartisan stakeholder engagement on the bill. As a result of that engagement, the measure has improved significantly and much more privacy forward. To date, H.R. 4782 has been endorsed by ADL, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the NAACP, the Jewish Federation of North America, the Counter-Extremism Project, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I sincerely thank my colleagues and all the groups we engage with to help make sure we get this right, and I look forward to continued engagement on this effort. Turning to other business before us today, the committee is considering 10 other bills that address timely issues like drones, opioid trafficking, civil rights and civil liberties, and climate change. I'm pleased that the committee has worked in a bipartisan manner to get to this day and is poised to advance bills that will make the country more secure. With that, I now recognize the ranking member of the committee, Mr. Rogers, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I want to join you in mourning the loss of Elijah Cummings. He was a great man and will be sorely missed by this institution. I want to thank the chairman and his staff for working with us on this important markup in such a bipartisan way. Many of the bills that we will consider today present effective solutions to important homeland security issues. I hope we can incorporate these and other bills into a robust DHS authorization product in the next few months. I wanted to briefly highlight the Republican bills on today's agenda. H.R. 4716 by Mr. Higgins will help improve CBP's capacity to detect and interdict opioids and other deadly drugs that have ravaged our communities. I thank the subcommittee ranking member for his leadership on this issue. H.R. 4402, offered by Ms. Lesko, will improve the security of America's 36,000 miles of inland waters. I thank the subcommittee ranking member for her strong work on this important issue. H.R. 4753, offered by Mr. Crenshaw, will help reduce potential vulnerabilities in our supply chain. I commend the subcommittee chair ranking member for his efforts. H.R. 4237, offered by our former committee colleague, Mr. Radcliffe, will improve CISA's ability to defend federal, state, and local networks against cyber threats. I thank him for his continued commitment to this important issue, and I ask unanimous consent to insert a statement from Mr. Radcliffe in the record.
Without objection.
I'm happy to support these four Republican bills as well as the H.R. 3787 introduced by Mr. Perry, another former member of our committee. Finally, I want to thank the chairman and his staff for working together on a commission bill. This bill seeks to provide policymakers with recommendations on how to tackle the very real problem of online radicalization. The amendment offered today makes improvements to address concerns about the bill's impact on the First Amendment, and I intend to support it and the underlying bill. However, I do so with the understanding that further improvements to the bill are warranted as the bill moves forward. I would like to continue to work with the chairman on these outstanding issues. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Rogers. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. By agreement between the chair and ranking member, the committee, by unanimous consent, shall use an amendment roster today.
Reserving the right to object, and I will not object, would the chair please explain our agreement regarding the amendment roster? I yield to the chairman.
I thank the gentleman and all committee members for agreeing to use of an amendment roster. We've agreed that the bills be open to amendment at any point and that we will take up amendments in the order listed on the roster. The chair will allow members to offer amendments listed on the roster out of order to the extent practicable and in manner not prohibited by House or committee rules. Amendments not listed on the roster may be considered at the conclusion of consideration of the roster. Additionally, it is my understanding there is bipartisan agreement on the bills and the amendments thereto. Accordingly, the chair will be making unanimous consent to consider the bills and the amendments thereto en bloc in the interest of time. The members with bills or amendments included in the en bloc will still be recognized for a statement at the conclusion of the markup.
I thank the chair for this explanation. I intend to support both en blocs before us today and withdraw my reservation.
Thank you very much. I now call up H.R. 3787, H.R. 4237, H.R. 4713, H.R. 4737, H.R. 4782, and I ask unanimous consent that the bills be considered en bloc without objections. So ordered. The clerk shall designate the bills.
H.R. 3787, H.R. 4237, H.R. 4713, H.R. 4737, H.R. 4782.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with. The bills and amendments filed on the roster were circulated in advance and printed copies are available. Are there any additional amendments to any of these bills? Hearing none, I ask unanimous consent that H.R. 3787, H.R. 4237, H.R. 4713, H.R. 4737, H.R. 4782, together with the amendments listed on the roster, be ordered to be reported to the House with a favorable recommendation. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, staff is authorized to make any technical or conforming changes. I now call up H.R. 2932, H.R. 3469, H.R. 4202, H.R. 4727, H.R. 4739, H.R. 4753, and H.R. 4761. And I ask unanimous consent that the bills be considered en bloc. Without objection, so ordered. The clerk shall designate the bills.
H.R. 2932, H.R. 3469, H.R. 4402, H.R. 4727, H.R. 4739, H.R. 4753, H.R. 4761.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with. The bills were circulated in advance and printed copies are available. There were no amendments pre-filed to these bills. Are there any additional amendments to any of these bills? Hearing none, I ask unanimous consent that H.R. 2932, H.R. 3469, H.R. 4202, H.R. 4727, H.R. 4739, H.R. 4753, and H.R. 4761 be adopted and ordered to be reported to the House with a favorable recommendation. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, staff is authorized to make any technical and
Chairman.
conforming changes.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. I think you meant to say 4402 instead of,
4402?
yes, sir.
Yes, I did.
Let's go. Yes, sir. All right, so 4402 is what you said. Okay, thanks, sir.
Okay. I would hope a fellow Texan understand the Mississippian's language. Does any member seek recognition to speak on the adopted bills? Young lady from Michigan, Ms. Slotkin.
Thank you. I'm also speaking on HR 4402. I was really glad to work with Representative Lesko on this. We have 3,288 miles of coastline in Michigan, second only to Alaska. So all you Californians and Floridians and everything, I'm sorry, Michigan has you beat. So inland waters are a really big deal to us. Maritime security is not just on our oceans, but on our Great Lakes, which are a huge part of our U.S.-Canadian border. It's extremely important to us that Department of Homeland Security have the mandate to conduct a thorough assessment of our inland waters, our lakes, our streams. I'm really proud to have done this on a bipartisan basis, and thanks for passing it through.
Thank you. Any other member wish to comment on legislation before the committee this morning? Gentleman from Louisiana for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, my bill, H.R. 4761, the DHS Opioid Detection Resilience Act of 2019, is being considered by the committee. I've walked the border with my brothers and sisters of the Thin Blue Line, and I've seen what CBP is up against on a daily basis. Our nation's cartel adversaries are ruthless in their determination to exploit our laws and poison our communities with addictive drugs that bankroll our operations. Transnational drug traffickers operate like a business, always looking to capitalize on products with high demand and high profit margins. Fentanyl and its analogs are being produced mostly in China, but also increasingly in Mexico. Most illicit opioids enter the United States through the mail, concealed within vehicles, or cargo coming through ports of entry and in backpacks of cartel drug runners. According to the Drug Enforcement Administration, the fentanyl coming through the mail is an average of 90% pure. Mexican drug traffickers are increasingly moving fentanyl as well, cutting it domestically and pressing it into pill form, then smuggling it across our southwest border. The 2018 DEA threat assessment stated that the purity level of the fentanyl coming across the land border is on average less than 10% pure. My bill would address gaps in CBP's opioid detection capability by requiring the CBP Commissioner to implement a strategy to ensure chemical screening devices can identify narcotics in an operational environment with low purity levels. H.R. 4761 also requires DHS to develop a centralized spectral database for chemical screening devices to ensure a unity of effort across all components that encounter opioids in the field. I want to thank Congressman Clark and Congressman Rogers, McCall, King, Rose, Katko, and Joyce for signing on as their original co-sponsors and for their support of this important legislation. I thank the chairman for allowing me to speak. I urge a yes vote on the bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair
Mr.
recognizes the
Chairman, I'd
gentlelady.
like to ask for unanimous consent to offer into the record a letter of support of my bill from the CBP Officer Union, the National Treasury Employees Union.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Clark, for 5 minutes.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I've introduced H.R. 4739, the Synthetic Opioid Exposure Prevention and Training Act, to build on our efforts to stop the flow of synthetic opioids into our country. Sadly, we are all aware of the terrible nature of the opioids crisis. Over the past decade, hundreds of thousands of Americans have died from the use of various forms of opioids. While the crisis began with the reckless distribution and overprescription of pharmaceuticals such as OxyContin, this ongoing epidemic is increasingly driven by fentanyl and other synthetic opioids. My state and city are not immune. In New York State and in Brooklyn, we have seen a steep rise in deaths from synthetic opioids over the past several years. These dangerous chemicals, often manufactured in laboratories in China and Mexico, are imported into the United States, arriving at land borders, seaports, and international mail facilities. Our major point of entry is the International Mail Facility at JFK Airport, only a few miles from my district. At JFK, as at every port of entry, CBP personnel screen packages and cargo. On a standard day, CBP will screen more than 67,000 cargo containers and seize more than 1 ton of illicit drugs. Personnel screening for fentanyl needs to have the training to do their jobs as effectively and safely as possible, so the maximum quantity of opioid possible can be kept out of our communities. This bill minimizes the risk of injury or death to frontline personnel from deadly chemicals by updating training requirements on the dangers of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids. It also requires U.S. Customs and Border Protection to provide adequate personal protective equipment, life-saving antidotes in the event of accidental exposure. NTEU, the union that represents these workers, has endorsed my legislation. The threat posed by these synthetic drugs, like fentanyl, is extreme. Even a few milligrams can be lethal if mixed into a compound or accidentally inhaled. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, synthetic opioids cause tens of thousands of overdose deaths every year, shattering communities, straining public health resources, and upending lives. The percentage of synthetic opioids seized by has skyrocketed in recent years, increasing by more than 400% since 2016. In this environment of heightened risk, DHS Inspector General issued a red alert warning that workers were at risk from accidental exposure to synthetic opioids. In its July 2019 management alert, the OIG cited major issues within CBP, including inadequate training, lack of protective equipment, and the lack of continuous access to the overdose antidote naloxone to workers in the field. H.R. 4739 directs CBP to fully implement the OIG's recommendations. This bill is one component of a larger effort to keep up the fight against the opioid crisis by training the frontline workers who intercept deadly chemicals before they can poison our communities. H.R. 4739 plays a vital role in our struggle to overcome one of the greatest public health crises in our history. I encourage my colleagues to support this measure, to vote in its favor, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The gentlelady yields back. Are there any other member who seek recognition to speak on the adopted bills? Gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Lesko, for 5 minutes. any adopted
Okay,
bill.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize for being late. I rushed here from another event, but I heard that Representative Slotkin said nice things about my bill and co-sponsored it, so thank you very much. And I know everybody's probably in a hurry, but I'm going to say a little bit about my bill, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
A little bit.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll try to talk fast. I am pleased that the committee is meeting to consider my legislation, H.R. 4402, the Inland Water Security Review Act, which will bring attention to security risk facing America's inland waterways. Since becoming ranking member of the Transportation and Maritime Security Subcommittee, I have seen the critically important work of the United States Coast Guard to protect and defend America's maritime sector and promote trade and travel. The Coast Guard's Homeland Security missions help mitigate drug and human trafficking, illicit economic activity, as well as other criminal or terrorist actions in the maritime environment. Every day, cooperation is facilitated to engage all levels of government and industry in security efforts, and I hope this bill can promote their important role. My bill will direct the Secretary of Homeland Security to conduct an analysis of specific threats towards America's inland waterways. These waterways, such as rivers, bays, and interconnected lakes, are critical to trade, travel, and commerce. However, they can also be exploited by bad actors seeking to move illicit drugs or conduct criminal or terrorist activity. Specifically, my legislation requires the department to conduct an analysis of current and potential terrorism and criminal threats by individuals or groups seeking to enter the United States through inland waters or exploit security vulnerabilities on inland waters. H.R. 4402 will provide Congress with information related to security challenges facing inland water ports and associated threat mitigation efforts. I want to thank this bill's bipartisan co-sponsors on this committee, Representative Slotkin, Representative Rice, and Representative Correa. The chairman of the Transportation and Maritime Security Subcommittee, I also wish to thank Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Rogers for helping to get this bill included in the markup today, and I ask for your support. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any member seek recognition to speak on any of the adopted bills? Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a parent and a legislator, I have real appreciation for the fact that children generally lack the ability to protect and advocate for themselves and are more vulnerable to all disasters, whether natural or man-made. As such, in the course of my subcommittee's oversight of the Department of Homeland Security's emergency preparedness and response activities, we have given special attention to the needs of children and have identified some gaps in how they are addressed by the department. In particular, we found that FEMA has consistently missed the mark when it comes to acknowledging and prioritizing the unique needs of children in its disaster-related activities. In fact, former FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate recognized this significant gap in FEMA's operations when he established the Children's Technical Expert position within FEMA. This position, however, has never been formally authorized in law, which creates uncertainty surrounding whether FEMA will continue to make it a priority. That is why I introduced this legislation. H.R. 2932 would formally authorize the Children's Technical Expert position within FEMA to ensure the needs of children are reflected in the agency's emergency preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation activities. In consideration of this, the Homeland Security for the Children Act also directs the department's Undersecretary for Strategy, Policy, and Plans to incorporate feedback from children's organizations into the department wide activity and would require the Undersecretary to report to Congress on the department's efforts to incorporate the needs of children into its policies, programs, and activities. My bill was endorsed by Save the Children and enjoyed broad bipartisan support in last Congress. I thank my colleagues on the committee for supporting my bill, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman from New Jersey yields back. Are there any members seeking recognition to speak on any of the adopted bills?
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to support the H.R. 4237, which is the Advancing Cybersecurity Diagnostics and Mitigation Act. I want to thank Mr. Ratcliffe for reintroducing this important piece of legislation that will further the cybersecurity of our civilian federal agencies and departments, and I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of it. The CDM program at CISA is comprised of 4 key aspects: reducing the agency threat surface, increasing visibility into the federal cybersecurity posture, improving federal cybersecurity response capabilities, and streamlining FISMA reporting. To most effectively safeguard these departments, all 4 components must be employed. The CDM program has been operating with these agencies since 2013, and it's time to codify the important work being done. By coordinating these civilian agencies, Homeland Security will be provided with a whole-of-government situational awareness to determine the scope and scale of intrusions and attacks. The CDM program's role in the larger federal cybersecurity strategy is vital in protecting data and allows our cyber defense to adapt in real time to emerging threats. CDM analytics provide these agencies with key visibility and understanding of their systems by showing what is on their network, who is on their network, what is happening on their network, and how is their data protected. This bill will continue to work with the work that the CDM program has been doing and expand the resources at their disposal. Streamlining the cybersecurity process will create a more agile response to the threats these agencies face daily. I want to thank you for giving me the time, Mr. Chairman. Now to yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentleman from New York yields back. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from New York for 5 minutes. Ms. Clark.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Ms. Lesko, I was a bit delayed, and we were already in a voice vote on a very important piece of legislation that we've already advanced, and that's H.R. 4737, the Department of Homeland Security Climate Change Research Act. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. Climate change is real, it's happening, and that's a fact. Since the 19th century, the Earth has warmed roughly 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit and is predicted to reach 2.7 degrees by 2030. Within the scientific community, this isn't even a debate anymore. In 2017, even federal scientists issued a report saying that man-made greenhouse gas emissions are the most likely leading cause of such warming. Its effects on our lives cannot be overstated. In recent years, we've seen extreme weather events affect communities all over the country, including in my dear Brooklyn, where Superstorm Sandy devastated our communities. From Florida, where Tropical Storm Nestor made landfall over the weekend, to a bomb cyclone that hit New England last week that knocked out power to thousands, to fires out west, scientists are studying how climate change is making these events more frequent and intense. However, climate change is a worldwide phenomenon, and other countries are also struggling to adapt to its effects. And as countries face increasing instability due to climate change, there's some evidence that extremist groups are seeking to take advantage of vulnerable people. In fact, a recent study by the University of California, Berkeley concluded that droughts and famines, floods, wildfires, and other events caused at least in part by climate change lead to instability that extremist groups can take advantage of to create conflict. The Department of Defense has already started paying attention to this issue. In 2015, the DoD published a report entitled National Security Implications of Climate-Related Risks and a Changing Climate. In the 2015 report, DoD concluded that climate change is a present security threat, not strictly a long-term risk. As such, DHS should also be researching the homeland security implications of climate change. However, the department has not published any significant research analyzing the effects of climate change on the homeland security mission. This is a dangerous oversight. My bill will ensure that DHS's Science and Technology Directorate looks at what is already known about how climate change is affecting the homeland. conducts research to fill out any current information gaps, and develops plans to mitigate climate change's effects on our homeland. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes, Mr. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all my colleagues for the support on this bill. The Department of Homeland Security is charged with securing our border, defending our networks, safeguarding air travel, and protecting our land and seaports. To carry out these important missions, it's imperative that the equipment and tools DHS uses are secure. Numerous reports over the last few years suggest that Chinese-made drones could potentially be used to send sensitive flight information to China-based companies, where it could be easily accessed by the Chinese government. The DHS Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, states that these unmanned aircraft are a potential risk to an organization's information, and that the drones contain components that can compromise your data and share your information on a server accessed beyond the company itself. This poses a real concern for sensitive law enforcement and homeland security operations. My bill, H.R. 4753, the Drone Origin Security Enhancement Act, prohibits the Secretary of Homeland Security from procuring unmanned aircraft systems manufactured in a foreign country that has been labeled a strategic competitor by the Department of Defense. The bill mirrors similar language that was included in the Defense Authorization Act for the military. Given the sensitive nature of the work of DHS and its components, I think it's imperative that we adopt this security measure. Thank you, everybody, for the support. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Texas yields back. Do we have any other members seeking recognition? Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I shall not need 5 minutes. I'd like to thank the staff, your staff, the committee staff, my staff. I'd like to thank you and the ranking member for your stewardship, because stewardship involves taking on the responsibility to protect something worth protecting, and what we're doing today will strengthen and protect Homeland Security. I thank you both. And as a litigator, I would ordinarily say, may I be excused, Your Honor. Thank you.
You may. Gentlemen, yields back. Are there any other members seeking recognition? This concludes the consideration of the bills noticed by the committee for today.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Rule 22, Clause 1 of the Rules of the House, I move that the committee authorize the chairman to offer such motions as may be necessary in the House to go to conference with the Senate on the bills ordered reported by this committee today or on similar Senate bills.
Without objection, the motion is agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to the House Rule 11, Clause 2L, I ask that members have 2 calendar days to file with the clerk of the committee supplemental, additional, or minority views on each of the bills reported by the committee today.
Without objections, so ordered. The chair acts unanimous consent to include in the record letters of support on today's bill from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Counter Extremism Project, the Jewish Federation of North America, the Center for American Progress, the National Coalition on Children and Disasters, the National Treasury Employees Union, and Save the Children. Without objection, so ordered. There being no further business to transact, the committee stands adjourned.
See you later.
All right.